We're back with another science conversation on intuition. So many of us have had incredible things happening in our lives because of intuition. I know for me, there have been so many opportunities, synchronicities, even miracles come into my life because I followed that little nudge inside and I'm like, this isn't really logical, but I'm just going to do this. And then something incredible happens. And we can attest that to intuition. But a lot of the time when we're talking about intuition, we might worry that it's woo-woo, that people won't understand, that people won't get it, that it's magic, whatever it is. And I'm here to tell you that there's actually a lot of science infused with intuition as well. So we're going to talk about the anatomy of intuition, what our brain is doing for us. And we're also going to talk about some of the other science around how that information can come into our mind so we make those intuitive decisions. So I have with me our award-winning neuropsychologist on our team, Dr. Aubrey, who we're going to dive into the science. And if you're watching this and you love this conversation, definitely let me know in the comments. What do you think? What are some cool things that have happened to you because of following your intuition? And what other questions do you have for us that you would like us to explore the science around? Because that's one of our favorite things to do. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Aubrey. Thanks for being here.
I love it. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, I think intuition is such a great topic because there's a lot we know and there's a lot we don't know. And so it's a great place to kind of start thinking about the science of what we do know and kind of like think about, like you said, Reese, times in our life where things happen and something comes to us. We have no idea where it's coming from, but it's protecting us or it's directing us or it's serving us in some way. I know I feel those nudges all the time. So I think a great place to start, though, is like, let's start with the science and what we do know. And one of the things that we do know is you can think of your intuition kind of as a skill, because one of the things we know about intuition is that it is rooted in our precognition information system, if you want to call it that. That's one of like a few terms you could use. But our brain is constantly scanning our environment, our memories, what's going on internally, what's going on around us. And it's things beyond words, right? It's not just that our brain is taking in the conversations we're having and what we're saying, right? It's taking into account factors that you probably wouldn't even expect. So things like literally the heart rhythm of the person that's right there with you, the way their facial muscles are moving, the pheromones that they're giving off, right? The biophotons that they're giving off. We have a whole video about that, which is super cool. But there's all this information that really is below the surface. Our brain is taking in all of it. And it's so much so that it's really hard to even estimate how much our brain is taking in. But it is doing that. And it's been evolved over millennia to help you make super quick decisions, sometimes faster than you can even think, which is why a lot of our gut decisions, maybe that's even, I think a really good word to use, but they come from twinges in our body or things that happen as we're thinking, almost to, in some cases, almost like it's overriding our thoughts, right? Or it's coming even before we have a chance to make a decision. And when I say that intuition can kind of be thought of as a skill, it's because I really would love, if you're watching this right now, I really would love if you were to think of yourself as totally wired to achieve your dreams, your goals, navigate this life that you're living right now. But you can participate in it. You can strengthen it. You can limit the noise. And I think that's the biggest barrier that a lot of us feel to our intuition is that noise. And the science does show us that we do have a lot of what we call incoherence in our bodies most of the time. So from the moment you're waking up and you're thinking about what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, maybe even checking your phone, right? Something as stimulating as that, if we're really honest with ourselves, right? How stimulating that can be. All of these things are immediately like bringing information into our body. Our brain has to process it, right? And so it's given a lot of work from the second that we're waking up. And so one of the things we can do to strengthen that intuition muscle and kind of get a little bit closer to knowing what it feels like and how we can recognize when our intuition is talking to us is to help limit that noise. And so there's a couple of pro tips I'd love to share. But I do want to just, emphasize that. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do is just, first of all, realize there's so much noise, things that aren't necessarily relevant to the life that you want that's going on around you. And you really can participate in how much of that is reaching your mind, your heart, your nervous system. and affecting your life. So I'd say one of the pro tips, and this is kind of clear based on what I just said, is for sure, first thing in the morning, if you can, limit the information that you're giving your brain, right? So that can be things like lowering the stimulation, keeping the lights low, keeping the sound off on your phone, even just taking 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes if you can to sit and actually meditate, whatever that means to you. Maybe close your eyes, really limit that stimulation so you give your mind a chance to process whatever it wants to process, right? And if you are doing the things that we teach on this channel and in the SFI method and really aligning with your goals, that'll only benefit it all the more because your brain is already going to be hardwired towards those goals, and it's going to be so thankful to have a chance to think of strategies, think of what habits you can develop today to align you with that. That's going to be really incredible. A couple other things that you can do is if you're a journaling kind of person, you can go about your day really thinking about moments where you feel a nudge, whether it's a thought that comes out of nowhere or a feeling sensation that you have in your body, and actually writing it down so you can see what the patterns are. Maybe you'll realize in a couple of days that you're really tuned into your intuition at night before bed, but not during lunchtime when it's like the height of the activity in your day. What can you do to make it so that your lunchtime is a little bit more similar to your nighttime? Maybe it's going into a different room to eat. Maybe it's taking a moment where you're not connected to electronics for a little while, right? Putting your phone on do not disturb for a little while. What is it that you can do to make it to align that environment so that it's better aligned with the one where you do feel that intuition? And I'd say this is like the final thing I want to share just on that before we can start chatting if you want, Reese, is to think about, like, visualize the decisions that you're looking to make, whether it's today, this week, this coming month, and give yourself a chance to actually do a body scan. So we talk about body scans a lot in the SOPI method, but I'd say very simply something that you can do is think to yourself, okay, I'm going to make a decision about where we go on vacation, like in this upcoming holiday, right? It can be place X or place Y. Give yourself a chance to sit with the outcomes of both of these options and see what your body is telling you about either one of them. And to really take it up like a notch, one thing you can do is use either a pendulum, which some people like using if you have access to one, or just a coin that's like a 2-sided coin, and either flipping that coin after deciding that one side is outcome X, one side is outcome Y, right? Or holding the pendulum and seeing if it's moving clockwise or counterclockwise. These are just examples, right? And assign a meaning to those outcomes and give yourself a chance to really sit with that outcome. So say you flip the coin and it says, okay, you're going to place Y. Sit with that, close your eyes, limit the stimulation around you, and really feel, what is your heart doing? Is it racing? Is it kind of slowing down? Are you getting goosebumps? Are you getting like a twinge in your belly? Are you getting warm, right? Give yourself a chance to see what your body is telling you about that outcome and kind of get a sense of, are you disappointed or are you glad? Are you excited? And after a while, doing this just like a few times for a few different decisions, you'll start to recognize all of those signals that are a part of your intuition system that are trying to speak to you, right? And you hear that term a lot, your intuition speaks in whispers. It's very much the case because, again, you kind of need that quiet to really get alone with yourself. Otherwise, you're giving a huge percentage of your energy to those outside places. That 1 to 5% of you that's trying to tell you something, it needs a little bit of quiet to kind of come to the surface. So that's a great way you can do that. I do it all the time. I do it with my kids. It's a really good way to kind of sense, how can I tap into that intuition that I have? So I'd say those are like the biggest takeaways I would want to share. There's some really cool studies out there too, like we could chat about as well. But that's like I'd say the biggest takeaway I have as like a mom, just as a person, that I would love to share with whoever's watching this video right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like for me, when intuition comes in, it's like a feeling and then a knowing. Like a feeling of like, yeah, I want to do that. And then it's like, yeah, I know that that's the right path. Even if on the backside of it comes like a little bit of doubt or fear of like, oh, can you do it? Oh, is that too big to do that? It's like, no, I got the feeling and I got the knowing first. So I'm going to go for that regardless of the fear or the doubt. I'm going to use my techniques to let go of the fear and the doubt, and then I'm going to go with the knowing because I know that that's right. I guess it's probably a little bit of a combination of muscle testing there too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's exactly what you just said, Reese. I think that's something important to highlight too is the doubt, right? We have this negativity bias we talk about sometimes. The people around us also have negativity bias. And so if we're taking into account their opinions, which are probably coming from that negative or fear-based place, and then sort of compound that with how we're feeling, of course, it's going to outweigh the positive feelings we have about it. So one of the things we can do is just the more we give ourselves a chance to listen to our intuition, the more we see its success, and the more we're going to feel confidence and feel trust in ourselves and in our intuition. So I think that's huge for sure. And it becomes that knowing, like you said. Yeah.
I love that. So one question I have for you is I'd love to hear, what is the science of intuition? Like what's happening in our body, in our brain when something comes through and we're like, oh, that's intuition?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that's going on is at any given time, our brain is activating, right, in different areas of our brain with different amounts of intensity. This creates our brainwave patterns. And so if you wanted to see it through that lens of brainwave patterns, we know that intuition tends to come when we're in the highest frequency. This is called gamma. We talk about this in the EFT method and ways that we can reach that activation in our brain. But when we are in that state where we're seeing that primary activity of our brain being gamma, we know that we're able to more quickly access ideas. These are better ideas. Often these are things we've never thought of before. There's a ton of research that indicates this. In the EFT method, we teach certain ways how to do this. But I would definitely say that one of the things that you can do just right now, just watching this video, is, like I said, limiting that incoherence. Because when you can reach coherence, you're actually limiting the amount of all those competing signals, right? And you're able to better come together in that general state of gamma, if that makes sense. So your brain is not fighting all these other signals it has to fight when you're overthinking something or when you're feeling really emotional about something. You're kind of in that sweet spot where your brain can just reach that frequency and stay there for a little while. And that's where we know those aha moments, eureka moments, those moments of just complete awe come when we're in that state.
Sorry, I was muted. And just so I'm clear, is that gamma or is that alpha?
It's gamma, although things like this can happen in alpha. Alpha is a very focused state. And usually we are in alpha when we're kind of in a flow state. But these aha moments are almost above a flow state, so even a higher frequency. Alpha is a great place to aim for just in general in our day-to-day. It would be kind of funky being in gamma all day. But for intuition, that's a great place to be. We want to be in intuition states, not for the entirety of the day, but as we need it. Alpha is a great state to be in kind of like more generally throughout the day where we're kind of calmly focused.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, that's so interesting. And I love Proctor. I've taken a lot of content from him, and I remember him always talking about how successful people make decisions quickly. And as you're talking about it, it's kind of making me think of like, well, what's the difference between intuition and logic? So when you are following your intuition, it's like maybe you have an idea, so you get that gamma spark, that aha moment, and then you make the decision. You're like, yep, that feels right. I'm going to go for it. So quick, you're making that decision. Whereas I feel like with logic, you might have to get out a spreadsheet. Sorry, I got delivery. You have to get out a spreadsheet, plan everything out, and then only then can you make the decision, and it might take a bit longer.
Yeah. See, I think that's such a great way to think of it. The first thing that comes to mind for me, Reese, and I love Bob Proctor too, one of the things that he shares is that once you make that decision, you can always find the solution. You might need to really go outside of the box to do it. That's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about those gamma moments, those moments beyond our everyday sort of like alpha state. We really can achieve that. And I feel like that's where I would draw the line between intuition and logic. Logic for me may be the brain's version of intuition, right? Because it is taking in data. So technically it is using logic. It's going for efficiency. It's going for the best outcome. But when we're thinking about our lives holistically, I feel like that is a really great step to take to kind of trust our brain to make those decisions. When it comes to the things that we're talking about, like strategizing, right? And coming up with something, usually that's things that are right in front of us. Usually that's our prefrontal cortex. That's when we're like really conscious about all the variables, right? We're almost fixated on the variables that we can see or that we can think of immediately. Whereas when we're in that gamma state, we can not fixate anymore and focus on all of the potential variables that we may not even be aware of. And so when we're strategizing consciously and using what we would refer to as logic in that way, we're kind of constricting ourselves to the obvious solutions. And usually to have, I think, an incredible life and the kind of things that like Bob Proctor preaches for, you have to sometimes go beyond what's the first thing that comes to mind, beyond the first obvious next step, right? The people that are the greatest thinkers, I think, are able to do that very readily. And almost all of them share that meditation is a part of their day, because I think that's the way that they access gamma, if that makes sense. That's the way that they access the variables beyond what the normal person will think of and see and do, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I love that. Like you're tuning into infinite potentials. So it's like, I've been in situations, maybe you have too, I'm sure you have too, where you've thought of all the options and you're like, I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to shift this. And then boom, another thing that you never could have thought of on your own just pops in. You get that like spark of intuition. And it makes me feel like what you were saying, when we're using our logic, we're basing a decision only off of the limited information that we know or we've learned in our limited life, like in our 30, 40, 60, however old we are. Whereas when you're tuning into intuition, you're tuning into all of the information that could ever come to you. Like I have this belief, I don't know how backed it is in the science. Maybe if you have information, we can talk about it. But I have this belief that like we can tune into all the information that's existed that might have even been outside of what we've learned in school or from experience. And I think that that's why sometimes we can think of an idea and somebody else has that idea, because it might not have come just from our brain, but it might be floating around. So I wonder if you have any thoughts or even research on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, first, the first thing that comes to mind, I think you and I maybe talked about this like years ago, but one of the funny stories, and you may need to fact check like the dates and all this, but you probably know Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy, right? She was a really brilliant actor. And she always said that she would pick up on things, ideas, but also just like signals and stuff just from around her. And it turns out that she had some sort of dental work done where she really was picking up on radio signals. And this is a phenomenon that they like, you know, it happens sometimes, and they've kind of like outlined it to the point where you can kind of say this does happen, right? Radio signals are real. We don't see them. We pick them up using certain devices. And I won't claim to be like an electrical engineer and know how all that works, but I know you need certain components. And sometimes under the right conditions, we do have those components. I don't know if it's like transducer or whatever the word is, but she happened to have this component where it was easy to pick that up. But in theory, that's floating around us all the time. Our Wi-Fi signals, right? All the ions coming out of our televisions when we turn it on, and from like our faucets and our showers when we turn it on. All of this is information. And I think that if you can accept that that is information that's coming to you, I don't really see where you would really necessarily draw the line about the information. Like I don't believe that there's a point where you can draw the line and say, this is the extent to which I'm accessing information, right? I just don't think that's possible. We know that even things like solar flares influence our cardiac activity. That's very well documented in the literature. So clearly some things going on with the sun will affect probably our thought patterns and all sorts of things. So who's to say things that we just can't see in our daily lives beyond even like our field of vision beyond the sun, right? Things that are out there in the universe, maybe out there in the multiverse, who's to say where that line is drawn? And I truly do believe that we are, you know, a product of our evolution. We've been constantly picking up on these signals for so long. I don't think it's possible for our brain to understand itself to the point where we can explain where all these things come from. But we do know that it is taking in this information and it's making sense of it as best we can in our current, you know, context. So that's what I would definitely say about that.
And that's so interesting. Like perhaps that's where frequency comes in, because just like the different radio signals, when on intuition, one of my favorite things to talk about and obviously use in my life. So I want to say thank you so much for looking into the research and bringing it here, Aubrey. And then for anyone watching, like I said, do you have questions on intuition? Are there any aspects of the science that you want us to dig into? Let us know in the comments. If you've had any cool, if you want to share with us any cool stories where you followed your intuition and something cool happened, let us know in the comments because I always love to read your stories. And if you love all of this and you want to dive deeper into intuition, into using our tools to create the life you want, I invite you to join Yes, It's Yours. That is my self-paced course, like a resource where you learn the subconscious tools to shift your life, shift your emotions, shift your beliefs, and design the life that you want. So I'll put the link to that below. And if you are wanting to help others with this process as well, this is what we do in the Yes Apply Method coaching certification. So I'll put the link to that too, so you can learn how to apply these tools with the science and the subconscious mind to your own life, and also to serve others as a coach, a teacher, a speaker, a leader, an author, whatever it is that you want to do. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Follow along with us also on Instagram. And thank you so much, Aubrey, for being here.
It was amazing. Thank you, Reese.